welcome to From the Booth. This is episode 3. It's a very special episode. My name is Sara.
And my name is Cassidy. We are joined today by a very special guest from the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled.
Hi, my name is Alice. I'm from the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, part of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and I am Chief of the Collections Division.
Welcome, Alice. Can I just say we are very excited to have you here
I'm
today.
very excited to be here.
Alice, I forgot to ask you, is this your first time to Arizona?
I have driven through Arizona. I started in Santa Monica and drove to San Antonio. So you can't help but go through Arizona.
I'm sure you stopped at a gas station.
No, I didn't even stop. It was super stressful, so I just kept going. It was at night, and I was like, Are
you kidding me?
No, I did not stop. I just kept going until I got to New Mexico. But now I'm here, and I'm enjoying it. It's so beautiful. And
you came at a great time of year.
I've heard, yeah. So that's fantastic. Looking forward to seeing everything.
And thank you for coming. So you said you're with the collections at National Library Service, and those listening who get your books through us, she has such an important job.
Well, I just get to work with the best people. I get to work with the collection development librarians who select all of the material for the national collection, and the cataloging team that makes all of those books discoverable. Mm-hmm. Those two are, core parts of any library service. And then what's kind of interesting about NLS, which differs from other libraries, is after the selection and the cataloging, we start the creating an accessible version of that product. So that's really kind of an interesting piece for us. It's very, it can be a long process or a short process depending on the source material. Sometimes we narrate content from print materials. Sometimes we use commercial recordings. Mm-hmm. If we're doing Braille, we always work with certified Braille transcribers and proofreaders. But our goal is to expand the collection as much as possible for our patrons to have access to as many titles as possible, but make sure they're all discoverable, they're all high quality. We have a quality assurance section who makes sure that everything that's recorded or transcribed into Braille is absolutely perfect, so our patrons have a really great reading experience. And in the collections division, we also have our recording studio. We call it the Media Lab because they do so much more than just recording. And they're responsible for a lot of our new and exciting ideas, doing graphic novels, doing like multicast projects. They're always thinking of new creative ways to create accessible materials and make sure that our patrons have just the best experience possible with the library.
Well, I was just going to say really quickly, you had mentioned graphic novels, and some people, myself included, was like, how do you turn a graphic novel into an audio experience?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's what it is, really, an audio experience.
And that's when at a recent conference this past fall, there was a panel talking about that, and I learned a lot. I'm like, wow, how they described it. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that I see it. That makes sense. It's totally doable, and it sounds great.
We've done a ton of different types of graphic novels. Historically, we had done something much more rigid, where we did a description of every panel, and it brought people out of the story, and it was really didn't represent the artist or the illustrator's vision.
And that's how I thought it was going to be.
I know, and it was at first, but then we were like, let's do something better. Let's represent the experience.
And it made sense.
Novel. Yeah, and Michael Rosato did Mouse. Mm-hmm. That was our first kind of big production where we were like, let's try a whole new style. And so the book Mouse it's a dense book, the images are dense, but his script for it must be 3 inches thick of paper. Because he wrote a script for it, basically taking all of the panels, taking all of the text, making sure that he's conveying the message of the book, not getting in between the reader and the artist and author, and really making sure that what he produced was something that was very true to what was being intended and really conveyed the message to the author or to the patron. So his work was just a jumping off point for us, where we were able to say, let's be so much better than we have been.
That's currently in the collection.
Yeah, so read it. It's so good.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. And you had mentioned making the titles accessible, and when we talk to a lot of new patrons, when we say if a brand new book comes out today, we might not have it available for a few weeks or so, and that would be a reason why we have to make it accessible.
Yeah. So even things that we get, we're very lucky. We have some really generous partners with commercial audiobook producers, and they provide us with a lot of content at no cost, which is incredibly generous of them, and we really appreciate it. But what happens a lot is that those audio files aren't necessarily accessible books. So we take all of the kind of raw material and turn it into a DTB, which has additional markup. It's going to have intros. It's going to be something that's more accessible for our patrons, takes advantage of all of that digital markup that allows people to navigate that book a little bit more successfully. And then sometimes for commercial audio, you might find that the entire book isn't necessarily narrated. Some pieces in a commercial marketplace are best sold, as a print supplement. And so sometimes in those cases, what we'll do is narrate that print supplement. We'll make sure the entire book is accessible, and then we'll stitch it together with the commercial so people have a complete package of what would be available.
Nice.
Right, because it just, comes back to the idea that just because something meets the basic guidelines of the definition of accessible doesn't mean it's actually accessible to all readers, because this is our last podcast topic for episode 2 was history of storytelling, and when we have patrons listen to our audiobooks, we want them to be immersed in the storytelling, not just listening to, a voice.
Read it to them.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like, we want to give patrons the same experience as if they were reading a traditional print book.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things I think about our program is that we do replicate the print book experience, especially for things that are difficult to create in audio format. So I'm thinking about cookbooks. We really leverage a lot of that digital markup to make sure that you can flip through that cookbook the same way that you would flip through a print book.
Right.
So if you're used to, you just scan the index, you flip through, you find desserts, then we'll make that experience the same for our patrons.
Right, because you're not going to read it from beginning to end.
No, it's not a Daniel Steele,
Exactly.
It's not a linear moment.
Exactly.
And then even inside the recipe, we'll leverage the digital markup to be able to jump by ingredient, depending on how the book is marked up, you can really, listen to the ingredient, go and get it, come back,
right.
and make sure that you, take it step by step.
Yeah, because from personal experience, from looking at recipes, even within the recipe, it'll say within the steps, it'll say seed note,
Exactly.
If you don't have this ingredient, here's an alternative you might want to, those little side notes.
Yeah.
So.
There's lots of reasons that we narrate a lot of cookbooks, and like I said, partly is because they're not really commercially available. So there's not a lot of alternatives for people who have a print disability. So we're really excited about all of the things that we've been able to add to our collection that people couldn't just, pick up at, Audible or something like that.
So to kind of get a sense of, we like to talk about books here.
Sure.
Alice,
Yeah.
One question we love to ask is what is currently on your nightstand, what you
Sure.
got downloaded.
I am prepared for this question.
Good. I am too.
Yeah. So I have a couple of, just books to enjoy, and then a couple of books for an educational moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've got multiple paths, let's say,
Same.
depending. I've got my, I started the Mick, I think his name is, I should have looked this up. Hallern, the guy who wrote Slow Horses. They turned it into an Apple TV show. And I'm reading his first one, which is part of the first part of the Slow Horses series, just rereading it, and then his most recent one, which is also, I have that in hard copy because.
What genre would that be?
It's mysteries. Mick Herron. He's a British writer, and he's extremely funny. And he's very brilliant, and he really sets the stage well. And I think that would make an excellent audiobook. So I would recommend anybody get the Slow Horses series.
Oh, I see.
Mick Herron, Herron. I've been enjoying the print version, but I think it lends itself very nicely.
Yeah, mystery is a big topic amongst our...
It's mystery, but funny spy mystery, but not slapstick funny, more just witty and charming and British.
That's when I talk to people, when they say they like mysteries, I be like, okay, let's chat about this, because mysteries can range from the silly
sublime to the ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, in this case, he's really fun, and I think he writes really well, which makes the book really kind of fly. And he really paints the characters so nicely, and you really get a sense of them. And I had watched the Apple TV series about it too, so I do always have Gary Oldman in my head now as Jackson Lamb.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't heard of this.
It's so good.
Either-
It's so good. Yeah, and there's like maybe 8 books or something now in the Slow Horses series, and it's about like people who are in like British intelligence, but then they kind of like washed out for some reason or another, and then they're like in this kind of like punishment office where like all the people who are bad at their jobs have to go. I'm really not doing it justice.
Is it like
I'm sure some patrons are like, that's not at all what it's about.
like you've been assigned to do desk work type of thing?
Yeah,
Instead-
like, yeah, but then they obviously like always come up with some like, you know, case that only they can solve, or you know, it requires their special powers
security.
of working
Yeah,
together.
exactly, right.
It's great. It's like, you know, overcoming obstacles, that type of thing.
gosh.
So it's really fun. I would recommend those. Those are great. And then I have downloaded, I got, just again, it's a reread, but Wolf Hall, because it's so fun.
I feel like that's been on my TBR. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
That's
do
a
it. Yeah, and it's a series, so if you get into it, you can like really lean into, you know.
Okay.
And you know what happens? Which is funny because you're still like freaked out for the characters. You know, you still have anxiety about like, oh my god, is she going to survive? She doesn't.
For a second there, when you said, you know what happens, I thought you were going to do like a spoiler.
No, how could I? I mean, like, exactly. That's why you can always be like historical fiction.
I love it.
Spoilers. So I got those, and then I do have just kind of like a straight history read about the history of Rome. So
good.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to read more books this year.
Yes, yeah, we were talking about that on our last
That was-
podcast episode of
yeah.
setting our reading goals for the year.
Do you going with numbers or genres or vibes?
do
All
we
straight
throw
vibes?
I did. My goal for this year is 40 books.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
I hit 29 last year. My goal was 30. I just came in so short. Almost
know.
there.
Let me just brag a little bit about our patrons. 100 circulations per patron
Oh yeah.
in a year. That's our average.
I know, and that's why when I hit 45 completed books
Yeah.
in 2024, and I thought compared to many of our patrons, I'm like that's
Light work.
beautiful.
You're driving our numbers down.
Cassie, what do you got reading, girl?
I know. If
I
you're
don't know why I
gonna hit
said that.
45.
I don't know why I said it like that.
Yeah, no, I as usual, I'm reading a million different books at a time. So one of my other current reads is Never Whistle at Night, which is an Indigenous dark fiction anthology.
Ooh.
Because Halloween and spooky vibes are good all year
Wait,
round.
who's the author of that one?
It's an anthology, so
Oh.
there's a lot of authors.
You said that.
No, but yeah, there's a lot of fun ones. I think I've read the first 2 short stories in it.
Okay.
And the narration is amazing, of course. It's a lot of fun. And especially I like short stories because, you know, if you're busy with life or a little overwhelmed and don't have time to get into a whole, you know,
Yeah.
500 pages of political intrigue, which I do love as well.
I
Don't
know, I
get
was
me
like,
wrong.
hey, I just said I was reading that story of Rome.
No, but,
Making
you
it sound
know,
bad.
I especially like those when I just have, 20 minutes like driving home or,
Okay.
when I'm doing the dishes, I
Yeah.
can listen to my little short story. And then
So do they have different narrators? How are they managing that?
this one,
It's different Indigenous.
I believe this
authors?
this one is multiple narrators. I'm seeing a list of like 8 people
Oh,
narrating,
I
which
see
is
what
exciting.
Yeah.
that really,
So,
that's great.
It's a really fun one. Highly recommend if you're into spooky reads.
It's spooky. Okay, you said spooky. Okay. A very mood reading, if you will. Which we both are. So I'm like you, Alice. I have the fun book and then the more serious book. Okay, so my fun book I have on my phone. It's called The Faculty Lounge by Jennifer Matthew. Apologies if I mispronounced that. And this one's just, it's kind of, how do you describe it? What genre? A little bit of mystery, a little bit of humor. It's basically set at the school, all these different faculty, of course, teachers, and all of their different individual stories. You got some cheating, you've got some...
Did they turn that into a TV show? It was called like the English department or something like that?
I don't know, because I feel like this one is relatively new.
Okay.
It's a timely glimpse at today's pressing school issues and a tender character study. A sprawling cast of teachers, administrators, and staff at a Texas high school.
Oh, Texas High School,
So,
yeah. Not a college English department.
So far, it's pretty good. So that's my fun one.
Okay.
And I have to point out, okay, this one I did not read. However, my dad read it, and he recommends it, and that's why I'm going to bring it up.
And did he give that to you on recycled paper?
Well, my dad, Yes, he likes to take paper and chop it up into scrap paper at home. So
That's such a dad thing to do.
Exactly. It was like,
that
oh,
is-
classic.
My
Even
dad
if
has
I
done
didn't
that.
know who that was
Okay.
from, I'd be like, I bet that's from
It's a dad note, yeah.
it was one of his tasks that he does at home. He's got time on his hands. He's been retired for many years. So technically this is a book I had checked out from the library, but then he started reading it. And I'm like, okay, Dad, you can read it. But then I couldn't renew it because there was a wait list for it. So I'm back on
Never a wait list on Bard.
That is very true. And this is on Bard. So it's called Challenger, A True Story of Heroism and Disaster at the Age of Space by Adam Higginbotham? Bottom?
Maybe.
Well, one of them. This is a nonfiction book. And my dad said, yes, it's nonfiction, but it reads as a fiction. He said it was very interesting. It was before your time, obviously, Cassidy, but
She's so young.
but also
Just glowing.
I was young. I was a young whippersnapper too. The Challenger that exploded, and so this is a book on that. And my dad recommends it. My dad, I thought that counted for something. Good old Donald recommendation. And then I myself, I am also reading this great book. It's called That Librarian by Amanda Jones. It is about the fight against book banning in America.
I feel like that the way you're supposed to say that title is a little bit different. I don't know, like a little bit like
That wait,
I don't know.
That librarian.
Yeah, something like that. Or she's that librarian.
you know, it's probably her. That was her intention.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
No, I got that. I got it.
She's
I
like
got it.
taking their words and
Yeah.
like taking ownership. But she's
that
like,
librarian.
she's like, yeah, that's me.
I am that librarian.
It's just a great read and very timely, and of course it hits close to home. And that is what I'm reading at the moment. So
Those sound really interesting.
yeah, and I have many others downloaded
Right.
on my Bard app to read. I will get to them. That's the beauty of Bard is I don't have to. They're not going to be automatically returned after 3 weeks. So
Exactly.
And no holds.
no,
Because I put a hold on a title back in December and I'm still waiting for it.
Oh my
so.
gosh. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, Bard is absolutely fantastic. I would that's what I always tell people when they say like, oh, what's the difference? I'm like, you can have any book you want for as long as you want. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
Bard really gives people a lot of freedom to, you know, join book clubs and do all of the things that you might want to do without having to wait. There's also a great chance to just like download it, try it, see if you like it, and then, you know, not have it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we first started Bard, that's how long I've been at the library, that was, I think, one of the most interesting things is that people had been used to getting books in the mail. And then that was the book you had. And you could read that book or you could not have a book, right?
Yeah.
But then once we got Bard, there was just this opportunity to download stuff, try stuff, have opinions about stuff that you could act on, you know, be like, oh, this isn't for me, I'm not going to read it. And then, you know, just get something else right away. So it's awesome.
Exactly. And I can attest to that. That's when we're talking about our 2024 number of books we've finished.
Completed.
I
How
said-
many did you start?
Like
No comment.
if I were to include the number of books I started and finished, it'd
Yeah.
probably be in the triple digits.
Yeah.
But and I say there's no shame if you don't like a book.
Yeah, there's
You
plenty
don't
more.
have to finish it. There's
Yeah.
so many books to discover.
Definitely.
You made me think of. I wanted to bring up really quickly collections connections.
Oh, do. It's my favorite new thing. It's
because
fantastic.
if people who aren't aware of it, can you speak a little?
Yeah, sure.
About
So I've always really wanted to showcase some of the gems of the collection that might not be most recently added. You know, they might not be the way that people like normally discover things.
Yeah.
And then I also feel like because we're so much a virtual library in so many ways, that people might miss that like serendipitous discovery of browsing shelves. You know, like seeing what's near stuff, or you know, kind of like just like walking down the stacks and you know, your eye catches on something you might be interested in. So I wanted to kind of like recreate that experience, but also kind of like show off some of the cool stuff that we have, both you know, from the national collection, but also some of the great stuff that our local network libraries have created in their studios. So we started Collections Connections kind of around a theme every month, with the idea that we want to, use that theme to kind of like build a story, to kind of like tell people an idea about what's possible, to find in the collection that they might not be thinking about.
Like a display.
Yes, exactly. It's like a fruit basket or something, and you're like, oh, I've never tried this before. But now it's right in front of my face, so I should try. The cool thing about Collections Connections is that it's in your email. You don't have to do anything to get it. You just sign up. You can email connections@loc.gov or call your network librarians. They'd be happy to help you. And we'll get you signed up for the newsletter. It comes into your email, and then all of the links to books are links to the Bard book. So you just click on that, and then it'll start the download for you. So there's lots of different ways to access the titles. Maybe you just want to make a list, or maybe you want to like directly download them at that moment, or maybe you want to use it for conversation with your reader advisor about things that you might be interested in or areas that you hadn't thought about. But we really try to mix it up in each issue. We've got fiction and nonfiction. We've got some like cookbooks, some other things that might be interesting to people. And then we also try to bring in a little bit of what the Library of Congress has to offer. So we had a really cool, the January issue was all about the kind of like national days in January. And one of those national days was the day that things fall out of copyright. So the like open, what's it called? Not open source. Open access day or something open like that. It's one of those things. Like when the things fall out of copyright and they become available, then that's a day that's celebrated. It's like a national day. And so in addition to a list of all the titles that came into the public domain, that's the word, this year, we also included lots of information about copyright, and including links to the Copyright Office, which is part of the Library of Congress. So we also want our patrons to remember, even though they're obviously very, important parts of their local libraries, they belong to the Library of Congress. So all of those resources are also available, and we want to remind people about the accessibility of those materials as well.
Because I definitely encourage people to sign up for that, because I was talking with a new patron the other day, and we were talking earlier how a lot of our patrons, they haven't read a book in a while, and she's like, I don't know what's out there, and I don't think that this would be a great option to.
It's a discovery tool. Exactly. It gives you a sense of about what's possible. That's certainly not a list. It comes with some kind of like fun commentary about it, and it gives you some context for why the books were chosen, so you can kind of get a sense of what we were thinking. I think that there's also at the end there's just like some fun like hot takes on new titles that have been recently uploaded to Bard. So I think it's a great way to just start thinking about what you might want to add to your wish list, or maybe something will spark your imagination and you just want to read it right then. I mean, that's the nice thing about Collections Connections, is that it's a like read it now, save it for later kind of publication. And another nice thing is that it just comes to your email, so you really don't have to do anything. You don't have to show go get it or anything like that.
How often does it come out?
We're sending it out once a month.
Well, okay.
Yeah, so it's not overwhelming.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. I think I'm excited about that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and there's also one other very kind of like cool thing that we're doing, which is like almost like our podcast here, but we're calling it an audio supplement. And the audio supplement, I think, is something unique that we can do with our patrons, because a lot of our patrons are used to kind of accessing information, in an audio format. And so we're doing like maybe interviews or like other types of audio material that kind of correspond to the Collections Connections theme. So for October, we did Hispanic Heritage Month, and we had lots of great, books that were by Hispanic authors, and that had lots of great commentary, lots of great resources. But then we had this awesome audio supplement that was interviews with librarians from Spanish-speaking countries that had come to NLS for a conference. And so we have their original, in Spanish, but then we worked with our studio to create this wonderful like translation. And so it's a real sense of like being at the conference. I think that patrons can feel the buzz of like the enthusiasm of people there too.
Really cool.
So we want to try to like experiment with ways that we can kind of bring more experiences and activities to our patrons in audio format.
I love it. If people are signed up for Collections Connections, do they automatically get that supplement, or is that
it's a link? So what we're trying to figure out the easiest way to do it, and like this could evolve, but right now what happens is just like a regular book, it has a DB number, and so that'll be, you know, you just click on that and you can download it. We've had some suggestions about other ways to like kind of like make it more of a subscription, and we're still trying to explore those. But I trust that our, you know, patrons are used to us kind of like trying to figure out the best way to get things done, and will stick with us while we, you know, muscle through the decisions.
I think that's a great idea. I like the supplement idea.
Yeah, it's super fun. I would recommend people, you know, just use that as a chance. They're not long either. They're like, you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes, something like that. But it gives you a sense of what's happening at the library, you know, what's happening in your library, and then also gives you just a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain.
Oh my gosh, that's very cool.
Now you want to listen to it, don't you?
I absolutely do. We were talking about how an audiobook is produced, whether it's the narrator or the whatever, that can make or break the audio, and I've listened to lots of bad audiobooks.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's another interesting thing about the relationship between the narrator and the patron, because I know that it's the narrator's like their goal is to disappear. You know, the goal is to like just not get in the way between the text and the reader. Yeah. But I also know that readers develop these like bona fide emotional relationships with their narrators. I always thought we should do one of those like Carl Castle, like I'm the narrator, I'll leave your outgoing voicemail message or something. But nobody has voicemail anymore, so it doesn't matter.
We do have people that love certain narrators.
Yeah, no, I have a patron that she's like, I want anything by Graham Malcolm, even if it's not subjects that I read. I just like listening to his
that's great.
voice.
I mean, and I think that's a great way to explore different topics that you might not listen to, is that you're interested in, you know, listening to this person tell you about it.
That's very good.
That's why you listen to podcasts, right? Like, it's a fun thing. Maybe you'll learn something. You just enjoy the banter.
I mean, absolutely. Certain podcasts like this one. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us for our third episode of From the Booth with our special guest Alice, and we hope you'll tune in for the next one. So until next time.
Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.